Hello, everybody. A very, very warm welcome to our latest webinar. We're going to give everyone a few minutes to join because there are quite a few of you joining us, which we're delighted about. And while we wait for others to join us, I wanted to go over a little housekeeping. Firstly, as I hope you're all aware, this webinar is being recorded so people can enjoy it at their leisure. Which I think actually means, slotting it into 5 minutes between doing other things. So naturally, it's only the panelists that will be recorded. We're going to hear from some wonderful speakers who are going to be sharing best practice on flexible working in some very different contexts. Sadly, you can't see behind me, but we've got the Working Families Happy to Talk Flexible Working banner behind me, but I couldn't quite get the banner right. Please do pop Q&As into the box as you think of them, and then we'll get to them at the end, I hope. We are very likely to get to them at the end. And absolutely make sure to keep the conversation going online as we hear from the panelists. Please use our hashtag FlexTheUK to share your thoughts and experience. So while we wait for the final audience members to join us, we have a poll we'd love you to take part in. So if the team could launch the poll, that would be fab. And there we go. So just as you're joining, if you want to answer those 5 questions, or choose one of the 5 answers to the question, what are your key areas of focus for flexible or agile working over the coming months? And it's a multiple choice. So it'll be very interesting to see. We can't vote, the panelists, and I can't vote either. But it'll be very interesting to see what you as an audience think. And I wonder when we are going to close the poll. It's about 11:03, so I think I'll give it another minute to 11:04. And as I hope you know today, we're going to be talking about flexible working and very specifically looking at some brilliant work being done by the best employers in the UK to support their staff to balance work and caring responsibilities. Right, guys, shall we close the poll? Oh, no, it's not quite a minute, but I think we're going to do that now. There we go. Okay. So as you can see from the results, the first thing, the largest choice is that people are going to be developing a sustainable hybrid model of working for staff. Now, of course, at Working Families, we'd like to call that a flexible model of working for staff, because we would like people to be able to work from wherever they need to, whenever they can. And then the second highest was upskilling line managers. Then reviewing use of office space, and then a kind of tie between reshaping specific policies and job design. So it's really interesting. Okay, thanks for closing that. It's been, I don't need to tell you this, of course, it's been an extremely tough year for the UK's 13 million working parents. We've had to balance home care, childcare, homeschooling, and a lot of anxiety with continuing to deliver in their proper job roles. It's been a challenging time for managers and employers who've been working hard to support them through it all. And last week, our Flex the UK campaign released new research with UK working parents that showed just how mixed the experience of working over the pandemic has been. Most parents said their employer had supported them to manage childcare over the pandemic and lockdowns, for example, by allowing flexing of hours or emergency leave. But nearly 1 in 5 got absolutely no support from their employer. And we also know that middle-class parents were much more likely to be able to access flexible working than working-class parents. And this was true even before the pandemic. Our polling, however, showed some real positives coming out of the pandemic, where parents were able to access flexible working. They saw real benefits for their family life. For example, 61% of parents said they got to spend more quality time with their children. 40% of parents also reported that caring responsibilities like childcare and housework were shared more equally over the pandemic, which is fantastic news. And our polling clearly shows that employers need to sit up and take notice if they are to attract the best and most diverse talent to their teams, because 69% of parents said they'd be more likely for a job advertised as flexible in the future than one that was not. We want to make sure that as and when those final restrictions are lifted this summer, we don't take a step backward and lose those really important gains. So our speakers today are a really stellar bunch. Our first three are the winner and two finalists of the Best for Flexible Working Award from the Working Families Best Practice Awards earlier this year. We have Emma Tompkinson, who's the Head of Change Project Partners Together Housing Group, and they are the winner of the Best for Flexible Working Award. Whoop, whoop. Then Louise Rooney, who's the Talent Development Manager, Streamline Corporate, who's finalist in the Best for Flexible Working Award, another whoop, whoop. And finally, Tom Hill, an HR advisor, Hill Dickinson LLP, who's another finalist in the Best for Flexible Working Award, and another whoop, whoop for you, Tom. So very welcome, everybody. Our Best Practice Awards happen every year and celebrate standout workplace cultures and practices that support flexible and family-friendly working. Needless to say, after the challenging year we've had this year, sorry, I lost my place. Needless to say, after the challenging year we've all had this year, this was the most inspiring and the most competitive of all our awards that we're doing. People are doing some very, very exciting work. We're thrilled to be able to have those three with us today. We're also very happy to welcome our Flexi UK campaign partners, Wates, to the seminar. Wates are a family-owned construction, residential development and property service business, and around the corner from me in Leatherhead, so good to know that they're a local employer too. They are doing some very exciting work, building flexibility into their jobs in a sector that most people don't automatically think about when you think flexible working. So we're really looking forward to hearing from Mark Tant, who's the Managing Director of Construction. So let's crack on with the presentations. And each of our panelists are going to talk for around 7 minutes about what flexible working looks like for their organisations, what they've achieved so far, and what their future ambitions are. As they talk, remember to get your questions in the Q&A box and share your thoughts on Twitter using the hashtag FlexEUK. And first off, I'm delighted to introduce Emma Tompkinson, winner of the Best Flexible Working Award. Emma, welcome.
Thank you, Jane, and thanks for that lovely introduction. Yeah, firstly, we were really pleased to win the award, so thank you for that. So Together Housing, we're one of the largest not-for-profit housing associations in the North, employing about 1,500 people. And we're really proud of the fact that we've always had a good culture of flexible working, but that's always been within certain core hours. And I think lockdown gave us a real opportunity to look at our particular project of smart working, because we had to suspend core hours as lots of other employers did, as we heard in that research, Jane, in order to be able to balance delivering services for our customers, many of whom are very vulnerable, but with their home commitments as well. We've got a new people strategy, and that includes the aims of belonging, performance, ownership and design, and smart working was one of our key projects in order to be able to deliver these particular aims. And what we wanted to do really was to create a culture that was based on the assessment of performance based on outputs rather than it being on the hours that somebody had worked. So it was probably about a year ago now, I would think, we started doing some research, and as we were talking at the beginning, there wasn't as much research out there in terms of the flexible working that other organisations were doing. So we got our heads together and did our own project planning, and I have to say it was quite limited at that time. But we started a project with about 15 different project teams covering about 200 people within our organisation who were going to be brave enough to do a range of working patterns between September and December last year. And those service areas included customer facing teams, business to business teams, and those that were supplier facing as well as back office functions. So we had a really nice mix of different service areas. The range of working practices that we looked at were things like working a 4-day week, a 9-day fortnight, having 1 day off a month, and people just being able to work, come up sort of in and out of work during the day in order to meet their deadlines, but also, as I said, to balance their home commitments as well. And one of the things that we knew was going to be absolutely key to this project was to be able to establish the data. Understandably, I mean, we receive public money, so it was really important for us to be able to ensure that we could maintain high performance. So we were looking at both the individual performance of each service area, but we also looked at things like sickness absence, performance management, the culture change that we were going through, and a wellbeing questionnaire that we developed bespoke to the pilot to look at things like happiness, motivation, engagement, and retention rates. And one of the most important principles we developed was asking people to stop recording their hours. It was all very voluntary, but we did develop a set of key principles and asked people to sign up to those principles, setting out the expectations on both sides. And what we established really quickly was actually that trust was really important and a really key principle that was underpinning all of this. The results, I mean, we kept checking in with managers, heads of service and staff all the way through the pilots. But when the results were in, it's fair to say, I think we were absolutely blown away with how positive those results were. Sickness absence reduced by 46%. Wellbeing, people were more happy with their pattern and working hours and with their work-life balance than they were prior to doing the pilots. And don't forget, people were still already working from home at that point as well. People said that they were more motivated to go the extra mile regularly in their work, that work energized them all or most of the time. And one of the most interesting things for us was that retention was quite positive as well. So those people that reported not actively looking for a role outside the organisation increased for us as well. In terms of the performance management, one-to-ones were happening more regularly, and we saw a 54% increase in objective setting, with most of those objectives consistently being on track. And finally, we did a sort of final question to people and said, how happy are you compared to, last December to 12 months prior? And over 89% of people said that they were happier now on the pilots than they were 12 months ago. As well as the data, we also found a load of other benefits, anecdotally, that we hadn't perhaps anticipated. We were able to extend our opening hours for customers for the front-facing teams with no extra costs incurred there. All the teams spent a lot of time and effort removing waste and making processes more efficient to gain time back. We found improved team working both within teams in order to serve customers and be the first point of contact for them, but also improved communication between teams as well, where they were developing sort of mini service level agreements and better communications with each other. And in terms of sort of what's next for us, we presented all these findings to our senior leadership team back in January. Brilliant news, we gained agreement to make all of those pilots permanent, so their new working patterns remain. And we've spent the last few months rolling out smart working now to all the other service areas as well. And we hope to have achieved that by the end of this calendar year. We've refined and communicated all our principles out to everybody. And as a result of that, we've needed to actually review some of our standard sort of HR processes and policies as well. So we've been working through that. Like lots of other organisations as well, we've also sort of now defined home, office or field working for everybody in light of the easing restrictions. And we're looking at another project to develop our core offices to be more collaborative spaces. We're continuing our great work on health and wellbeing, which runs in tandem with all of the smart working that we've done, as well as all the other elements within our people strategy like rewards. So that's really positive to see. And we're continuing to look to the future. We want to continue to push the boundaries. We want to continue to improve our services to customers and drive even higher performance, and at the same time provide great work-life balance for our employees. So for us, it's just been a fantastic project and something we're just all really proud of. It's been a great team effort, and it's just been absolutely fantastic. So thank you. Thanks, Jane.
Thanks so much, Emma. That is absolutely inspiring. And I think everybody can see now why you guys won.
Thank you.
In a very competitive field. And talking about a very competitive field, next up we have Louise Rooney. Louise, over to you.
Thank you, Jane. And I should say as well, congratulations to Emma and the team. That's a great result, and we can absolutely see why. A lot to learn from you. So to provide a little bit of context, we're a much smaller business. We started as a family business in 1975 as paper merchants, and we now have a small but thriving company, and we sell branded merchandise, print and protective products. If you Google sort of cool or luxury branded merchandise, you'll find us. And we currently have a headcount of 48, and we're growing. So we started out very much with a strong family ethos, and we're determined to keep that going as we continue to grow. I think we've always offered an alternative to traditional working patterns, because we know people have different responsibilities and priorities, and we know that they'll perform better, and they'll be much happier, more productive if they have that balance they need in both their working life and their home life. Our starting point is always to say yes, and kind of work backwards from that, rather than starting from a position of no. And we've long taken the view that it isn't a one-size-fits-all scenario. What might work for one person may not necessarily work for another person. So we try and steer clear of blanket rulings. We still have to be fair, of course, but instead we try and look at individual needs. So it's really a conversational piece, and it's about allowing the person to bring their whole self to work. So flexibility for us really includes remote working, term time working, working from home, part-time working, early finishes, late starts, flexible hours, compressed hours, reduced hours, and just general ad hoc flexibility when it's needed. So again, it's about putting people first and valuing them. As Emma pointed out, trust is a huge component, and it's vital in our employer-employee relationship. So we also measure outcome and results rather than number of hours spent at work. And what's crucial as well is our senior team also model flexible working, and they lead by example. So if they have a family matter to attend to, whether that's a wedding, picking the kids up from school, you know, one of their children's ill or something like that, they openly talk about it to their colleagues, and they also encourage the same behavior. And I would say in my 13 years at Streamline, I've never been denied a family commitment. And because of that, I think that strengthens that psychological contract as well. Family values are definitely at the heart of our business. We encourage people to discuss home life openly, as long as they're comfortable with that, of course. And so many of our policies are informed by that. We have a staff bulletin that goes out fortnightly, and we encourage people to share sort of family events, family photos, just actually talk quite openly and bring their home life into the workplace, and that's acceptable. We actually encourage it. So communication is key. We make an effort to communicate regularly with the team so that those that maybe are working remotely at the moment don't feel isolated, or they're not overworking to prove themselves either. And we have a culture team that's dedicated to mental health and well-being. So they address any of the potential challenges flexible or remote working can bring. So we do have operational staff. So for employees who aren't able to work from home or work as flexibly due to operational needs, we adopt a sort of let's talk about it, what is it that you need approach. Time off when they need it, staggered hours, coffee breaks, extended lunch breaks, they're all acceptable. And our regional managers are really good at actually working with our operational staff to make sure that they feel included as well, you know. So what have we introduced and what targets do we have? So we started flexible working in 2011, really. It was actually me. I was working part-time and I was really struggling with school hours. And I approached our managing director and talked openly about that. And he sort of said to me, what do we need to do here? And I said, I don't think you can do what I need, which is part-time and term time working. and he approved it almost immediately. So, you know, it was just wonderful to be able to have someone so receptive to that, and that's a decade ago. And we've really sort of continued that through since then, through to our sort of every recruitment opportunity that we have. So we view it with an open mind and on a case-by-case basis. I think that, as with everybody, flexible working intensified and was brought even more into focus in 2020 at the start of the pandemic. For the business to continue being productive and proactive, we needed to be agile and our approach, and even more flexible with our team. So working from home became a necessity. But the team have adapted really well, and they continue to work well, and many saying that they find that they're more productive, less distracted. And we've seen, you know, we had a great year last year as well, so our best year ever. So that was kind of proof really that, you know, it really did work for us. I think we've all learned to adapt and embrace a different way of working. So we now appreciate that people have children to care for, they've got lessons to plan, they're looking after elderly relatives or parents, small children to entertain, and even pets, you know, that need walking or looking after. So what we've done is we've enabled them to work to suit as much as possible, so they can care for their dependents. And I think it's actually brought us closer as a team, getting understanding of someone else's challenges and being able to support them. So it's definitely brought us closer. And our target is really, and has always been, to enable anybody who wants to work flexibly to do so. And there's not really a set figure or a cap on that. As far as what we've achieved and the impact, we've seen a positive impact from flexible working. We've got increased motivation, reduced stress, improved performance and productivity, and our ability to attract and retain existing staff has definitely improved. We send out an employee survey fortnightly, and measurements on that. There are sort of 10 key indicators, things like wellness, satisfaction, happiness, and work-life balance is included in those. And we monitor it weekly, and we currently sit at 8 out of 10 on that. That's for overall engagement, and that's against a benchmark of 7.6. We listen and act on feedback received, and our managers have seen the positive impact of engaging the team on preferred working patterns. So our approach, being a smaller company, is quite informal, but for those who prefer a permanent, more structured arrangement, then they can request put in a flexible working request. And we communicate that openly. We've done so recently on our sort of return to work communication. And what we're going to do is we're going to hold one-to-one discussions about people's anxieties about coming back into the workplace, and also have discussions around preferred work patterns to see how we move forward. We're fortunate enough to have a great culture, and I think in part that's attributable to our flexible working stance. It's a major plus on the recruitment front. People expect flexibility now, and quite rightly, I don't think they understand why an employer wouldn't offer this when technology actually supports it. So all our recruitment campaigns have the Happy to Talk flexible working tag, and it's discussed throughout the recruitment process. So in terms of our future plans and how we're going to sort of build on our progress, we've very much got a multi-generational workforce. That's everything from sort of school leavers to people like myself closer to retirement. So we need to adapt the business so that it becomes even more fluid to meet everyone's needs and to help them achieve the balance they need and to be productive and fulfilled both in their home life and their working lives. The landscape's definitely shifting. We've all seen that, and the boundaries between work and home life are becoming even more blurred. So I think we need to put procedures in place to ensure that people aren't subject to burnout. And we're talking openly about this in our leadership meeting. We've agreed to be united in our messaging on that front. So there's no sort of emails after working hours or weekends, and any time that's worked above and beyond contracted hours is taken back. We also want to keep the conversation around mental health and well-being open, and remain focused on trying to reduce stress factors for individuals. I think at the heart of it, really, it's about getting to know your people and understanding what takes precedence for them as they try and manage the demands of a world that's changing drastically and has done so over the past year. So post-pandemic, we're working with a team to create a better working environment and agree a solution that meets the business needs as well as individual needs, because obviously we still need to run a commercially viable business. So it's a balancing act. The feedback that we're getting suggests that some, not all, people want some form of hybrid working. And I think it's going to be difficult to argue a 100% return to work, and we wouldn't want to do that. Why would we risk losing the investment we've placed into training and developing our people, only to lose them because we're not prepared to adopt more flexible working post-pandemic. So we'll be doing return to work chats, line managers and individual team members to determine what preferences look like, and listening and seeing if we can accommodate that, or where we can hopefully meet somewhere in the middle. So ultimately, our goal's always been a path to 100% flexibility, and to allow people the flexibility they need, formally and informally. And again, it's not always the easiest thing to do, but it's definitely the right thing to do, and it's the way forward. And if we don't do it, there are organisations out there who will do it. So.
And of course, I needed to unmute myself. Thank you so much, Louise. Another inspiring presentation from a different sized employer. So it's really good to hear from you. Thank you very much. And we're now going to move on to Tom, our third speaker, who is HR advisor at Dickinson LLP. And again, another finalist in the Best for Flexible Working Award. Tom, over to you.
Thanks, Jane. Thanks very much. And again, congratulations to Emma being the winner, and also Louise as a fellow finalist for the award. And thanks very much for asking me to come on, really. As Jane said, I'm a HR advisor for Dickinson LLP. We're a law firm with around 850 employees. And we've got 4 UK locations. So our head office is based in Liverpool, but also got locations in Manchester. We've got a fairly new office in Leeds, which is currently growing quite significantly. And we've got 2 locations in London as well. The type of work that we do, we've got 3 business groups which do a range of different legal works. We've got the business services group, which covers things like property work, corporate work, etc. We've got our health business group, where the main client is the NHS, and then we've also got the marine business group, which covers areas of work such as yachts, shipping, and cargo and logistics. So a range of interesting work and different lawyers that we've got at our organisation, really. I think, what does flexible working look like in our organisation at the minute? Currently, we've got 95% of our workforce working informally on a flexible basis. The other 5% tend to be, I think we mentioned before, in terms of roles where flexibility maybe isn't an option, so people have to be on site to do maintenance work, or our facility staff and things like that maybe don't work as flexibly as the others in the firm, but around 95% do work on an informal or flexible basis. Even before COVID, we had around 80% of our staff working informally on a flexible basis. And I think that's stood us in really good stead going into the pandemic. The fact that we already had technology such as Microsoft Teams set up, we already had laptops set up for people to work from home. And I think essentially that all stems from one of our core values being trust. I think one thing that we always do try and put out to our employees, that it is, it's your choice, and we do trust our employees to be able to manage their own time, manage their own workload in order to be able to get the job done, but also to be able to have that work-life balance that they require, whether that means going to the gym to take a longer lunch, or finishing early to go to a gym class and things like that. It's just trusting your employees to be able to do that and allowing them to have that flexibility, really. I think also one thing that we've tried to encourage throughout the pandemic is just to ensure that we've got people are taking enough regular breaks from screens. I think that's one thing that I've tried to encourage quite a lot of people, because I think where we're in the office, we might have nipped to Costa for a meeting, or maybe just to hop up for a meeting. We're getting that break from sort of screen time, and people aren't really getting that now with Microsoft Teams. As great as it is, and as great as the feedback we've had on it, I do think it's important that for our employees do try and take that, them regular breaks, just to try and obviously support their own sort of mental and physical well-being as well. I think one thing that we've tried to encourage people to do, particularly during the pandemic, is around email footers. So if people can put on their email, particularly more senior staff, please note that my working days are, for example, Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday. If your working day does not fall on one of these days, I do not expect to reply on the same day. And I think that's really important, because maybe more potentially more junior members of staff who are getting emails from maybe more senior members of staff may feel the need to reply. And if they're replying on days where they're not, potentially working, or whether they've had an early finish, is that flexibility really there if they're already doing that? So I think that's been a really important thing that we've tried to do. Obviously, in terms of recruitment, we are using the strap line, so happy to talk flexible work, and that's something that we put on all of our job adverts. And I also think that what we've done quite well during the pandemic and working flexibly is we have still had quite a few new starters come into the business. We've got a really thorough and I think really effective remote induction process now, where we try to get new starters to communicate things like smart working, make sure that communications from line managers are there, and also videos to give them an insight into what the firm looks like, and that does include our approach to smart working and things like that, and the use of videos maybe rather than doing sort of more face-to-face things really. I think moving on to some of our targets, we have got a people strategy and sort of our people's mental health and physical health and well-being is at the centre of that. One of the main targets that we've got in terms of recruitment is for people, for ourselves to be a destination of choice for people who maybe come back from a career break or returning from a period of, say, for example, family leave. I think that's really important, particularly in the legal sector at the minute. I think it was mentioned, if you're not going to do it, other employers will. And I think we've definitely seen that that's the case by talking to other law firms and how competitive the market is. So I think in terms of if we can offer that flexibility to people and make sure that we are giving, trust in our employees to be able to give them that flexibility, I think it'll benefit the business, not only in retention, but also in terms of attracting people to the business, which is really important. And I think one of our key aims over the past sort of couple of years and moving forward is to try and increase the amount of female representation that we have in senior positions at the firm, and we think that taking this approach of flexibility can really support that, and hopefully support both our men and our women in ensuring that they have the flexibility that they need. I'll just run through a few of what I think are our key achievements over the past year. So on our most recent engagement survey, so we do have an annual engagement survey, but we have other surveys as well that we run, which I'll come to in a second. We've seen a 65% of our employees actually want a more flexible approach to work, obviously when restrictions are lifted. And I think that for us, that is going to be similar to what people have said. It's going to be that hybrid approach where maybe it's a 3-day or a 2-day split in the office or at home, or it'll be on a sort of a team by team and individual basis. We've actually one of our floors is actually halved in size. There's not as much desk, so obviously height is going to heighten the need for it to be that hybrid approach in terms of not everyone's going to have an allocated desk. It's going to be a case of, we've got a desk booking system, which is currently being sort of piloted, if you like, so that people can go in and book the desk so we know who's in on given days. We actually achieved an NPS score of 51. So if anyone's not aware of what that is, it's a question which is, how much would you recommend Hill Dickinson as an employer? We actually achieved 51, which seems a very good score. And given the tricky year that we've had, we've seen that as a real achievement, really. We're also voted as one of the best law firms for work-life balance on Legal Cheek, which again is definitely something that we're really proud of. We've actually seen a 6% increase in our headcount over the past 12 months, which is maybe quite surprising given the mass redundancies that some firms have done, and I think that's been the case. But I think what we've done is, we are trying to grow. And I think, as an example, where some areas of business maybe do require redundancies, other areas have grown. Obviously, with the legal world, a lot of legal work has grown in sort of demand. So we've actually, even though employees may not have the same working pattern moving into a new role, we try to make that work in terms of moving employees around the business to help retention, and also help people, fill roles as well in terms of keep the business moving. So that's a really good thing that we've got. We've also recently introduced in the last year a family leave feedback survey. So when someone returns from an extended period of family leave, after 2 months of return, we ask them to complete a survey on before, during and returning from leave. And if the feedback we've got on that is extremely positive, so I think some of the key themes of the communication that people had, the information that they received around smart work, and then also the contact from HR and managers. So I think we've got that. We've got an induction survey. As I mentioned, we've got an annual engagement survey as well. And I think what we try and do, which I think is a really important thing, is to take our feedback on board and try and sort of move forward with it. I'm currently undertaking a review of last year's results in terms of the surveys. We try and review them regularly, but from the sort of the last financial year, and we are putting things in place now move things forward. I think in terms of going forward, what are we going to do to sort of continue to in our approach to flexible work? And I think, as I mentioned, I think one thing that I would encourage people to do is to obtain feedback, you know, to try and obtain feedback on how sort of readily available information on smart working is, how do employees feel about communication during a period of family leave, etc., etc. One thing that we try and do within the legal industry, and I think you know, within our sort of our main competitors, is to have forums with different HR people to keep up to date on things that are going on in the sector and what people are sort of doing. So it can allow you to remain competitive, but also share challenges and how people overcome challenges, which I think is really important. As I mentioned, we've had office refurbishment, which has meant that there's been less desks, so there's going to be more of a need for that hybrid approach. And also remote working has meant that we can widen our pool of candidates as well. So, you know, potentially the roles in Liverpool, the pool may widen a little bit. Obviously, there is some ethical considerations in terms of where people are based, in terms of and where clients are based, in terms of charge out rates and things like that. But in general, it does give us more flexibility to move forward. And yeah, I think that's everything from me.
Brilliant, Tom. Thank you very much indeed. That was certainly a whistle-stop tour through everything that's happening at Dickinson LLP. Just a couple of things that I was fascinated by. It was so wonderful to hear all three of you talk about health and well-being. So wonderful to have culture being led by your senior executives. Because as we all know, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And if it's not visible at the top, then actually, in our view, people just don't see that it's practical for them. And certainly that's something that's come out of our annual indexes that we've been doing. You know, that kind of behavior needs to be modeled from the top. And such a emphasis, the thing that tied all of it together is the trust element, and the way in which people respond so positively to that. I can see that we've got tons of questions that have come in. So I'm not going to say very much more, but I think let's go to those questions. It's been just extraordinary listening to you. I think everybody can see why you guys were such extraordinarily worthy winners. Right, let's have a look at the Q&A and see what we've got in. So, key principles. What did your employees sign up for? Can I go to Emma for that, please?
Sorry, yeah, just figuring out how to unmute myself. Of course, thank you. Yeah, really good question. And some of these principles we thought about up front, and some of these principles sort of developed as we started to roll out our more flexible working. So it was around things like high performance. So performance had to be maintained or ideally improved. We had to continue to deliver great services to customers. That was an absolute given. We didn't want people to record their time. We wanted there to be an element, as we're talking about there, I agree, Jane, everything that everybody said is centered around trust. And it's okay talking about trust, but it needs to grow and it needs to develop. You can't just say you're going to have trust. It actually, you know, you have to work on behaviours for that to happen. But that was really important. So we had expectations, if you like, that were signed up to on both sides. There was the element about not recording time, and I have to say there were a couple of instances where actually staff themselves wanted to continue to record time, and we said, if that's what you want to do because that makes you feel better initially, that's fine. We had one example of a manager trying to record time, and we were quite quick to nip that one in the bud. The other principles were around things like it's not a one size fits all, and I think that's something that Louise said as well, and that really resonated with us, and we were having to talk about that quite a lot, particularly with our union colleagues, where they talk about fairness and consistency a lot. And actually we've got lots of people delivering very different services. We've got grass cutters, we've got people who manage £200 million bonds from the government. Those people can work in different ways, and we have to accept that they work in different ways and find what's an enhanced flexibility for them, not necessarily a one size fits all. The thing, I think the other principle was giving it a go. And there were lots of things when we were talking about the setting up the projects around, well, what do we do with part-timers? What do we do with people in the contact centre who are more sort of stuck to rigid hours? What do we do with bank holidays, for example, and all of those things? And in the end, we didn't necessarily come up with a solution. So we thought, let's just give it a go and actually involving the staff themselves. And I'd say that's another overarching principle is get the staff involved, because they know their jobs better than anyone. And they actually find solutions to all of these issues, or it turns out not to be an issue at all. I'd say for us, it was about measuring. That was also a key principle. We needed to measure it. You know, you talk about role modeling from leadership team, and that is really key. But naturally, those, you know, the more senior you are, the more accountable you are for the delivery of those services. And as I said in my introduction, we are spending predominantly public money, and we're accountable to the public. So it was really important that we needed to continue to deliver those services.
Brilliant. Thank you, Emma.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you. That's fantastic. The next presentation that we're going to have is from Mark Tant at Wates. So Mark, thank you. And thank you so much for the involvement of Wates in this seminar. And Emma, Tom and Louise will come back to you with some questions in a few minutes. Mark, over to you.
Thank you, Jane. And thank you to Emma, Louise and Tom. I think it's clear why they won the awards, and I think it's interesting that the common themes that come out through that process. I know there are a lot of questions, so I'll go relatively briefly through, hopefully. We are a large tier one contracting company, largely carrying out construction. As a group, we employ over 4,000 people, and we have the challenge where a lot of our work is site-based, and effectively that is a large-scale manufacturing facility on remote locations, on sites across the country. So whilst we have a number of head office staff that can work flexibly, and in many ways have worked from home over most of the last year, a lot of our site staff, we have probably a culture and a behaviour that's been learned over many years that challenges our ability, or at least our mindset, to work flexibly. So we did a large press release this week. We've committed to work flexibly through all of our roles in the business. And our challenge is to make those site-based roles truly flexible. And one of the key initiatives we've done with that is introduce something called One Simple Thing. And that one simple thing may be going home, doing a sports activity, collecting the kids after work, coming in later one day. For me, one of the things around commuting, we have a lot of people that commute during rush hour. And one of the challenges is, well, why do we do that? Why can we not flex our hours around the rush hour, mindful of the fact that we need to open sites on time, we need to provide that environment that allows for production. We've worked hard on our family-friendly policies around parental and maternity leave, paternity leave as well. So we believe we've modernised that environment, and then we've gone from a business that we were prophetically, we rolled out Skype as an old-fashioned technology in January of last year. So we managed to get it about 2 months before a pandemic came into place. So we've moved rapidly, really in kick-starting our business into a much more modern, much more flexible environment. We've now started re-equipping our offices. So like Tom said, we've got no allocated desk space. We are transforming our offices into more collaborative spaces so that they're not there as a 5-day-a-week desk, but they are there as collaborative drop-in spaces that are more flexible. And we're trying to modernise all of our site facilities. So not only do they care for the diversity that we have in our business, and increasingly so, but also that we provide a better environment and a more connected environment on our sites. We then have to really deal with just the culture of the business. So our starting point is a male-based, long hours presenteeism culture. So to a lot of our people on site, they say, well, yeah, we run a site, therefore we can't work flexibly. Well, we probably have 10 or 15 staff on most of our sites. So through flexible hours, through flexing the working day, not all of those people have to be on site all of the time. Our project managers, our project leads can spend the first 2 hours of the day writing reports, doing admin, and then be more present when they get there. So a lot of our philosophies are around achieving harmony between the kind of working environment and family environment, and removing waste out of the process. And for me, waste is around commuting, spending time in traffic, is about not working as productively as you can. And there is a business imperative that the fundamental belief is that we are more productive, more efficient, more effective as a business, and our people are, and that the kind of balance to that is that our people are able to spend more time at home with their families and have a more productive home life as well. But the benefit of flexible working is that both win. So it has to be a win-win environment. Done lots of stuff. I appreciate there are a load of questions. So I'm not really going to go into any more than that, because I'm going to cover a lot of common ground that I think are there with the finalists and the winners that you've had. So I'll probably leave it there, and we can come back to any of that within any of the questions, Jane.
Thanks very much indeed, Mark. Fascinated to hear the use of the word waste, which I think Emma mentioned as well. One of the questions that keeps them coming through is people who are on site, so thinking about Wates in particular. And Tom, question to you, the 5% of the team who aren't able to work flexibly, who are fixed, your facilities people, you know, the property managers, what kind of flexibility are you able to offer them?
Similar to what Louise mentioned, really, you know, let's talk about it. So people, I mean, there's been an example recently where someone has needed to temporarily reduce their hours for caring responsibilities, which we always try and accommodate. So I think it's one of them, the message that I have quite a good relationship with the manager of that team as well, is that, you know, if you do need to work flexibly, or you do need to, as I say, reduce your hours or anything like that, you know, let's talk about it. And we've had quite a few people during the pandemic who we've done that for and supported them through some difficult times, and some people again who needed, you know, who just needed a little bit of flexibility. So I think that the message that Louise says is absolutely right. You know, let's talk about it, and let's be approachable for them people to come to us. They do need, you know, temporary or any flexibility that they sort of need. So same message from us, really.
Brilliant, thank you. And I know Emma and Louise both mentioned that you'd had a really good year. I wondered, for all four of you, what's the feedback been like from your customers? Have they noticed a difference in your services, a positive difference in your services? Shall I start with you, Louise?
Yeah, I think I mentioned, Jane, we had our best year ever last year. We haven't seen a drop off from our clients. If anything, it's increased. We've only had sort of positive feedback. And I think obviously, you know, when you know people are happy working at home in a home environment, you know, that comes across to clients as well. And there's also some common ground, because a lot of our clients were working from home as well and working flexible hours. So yeah, I would say it's been positive all round for our clients.
Brilliant. Mark, Emma and Louise, anything to add on that?
The only thing I would add to that is that our sort of regulatory body's actually done a survey of our tenants and said, how do they feel about housing association staff being based at home? And their feedback has overwhelmingly come back and said, I don't really care where my, you know, the people that I need to talk to are based. I just want good services. So that's really positive for us. And our customer service score continues to increase incrementally slightly against a backdrop of more challenging customer service across, you know, UK PLC. So we're really pleased overall. Yeah.
That's brilliant. Mark, can I come to you? But we've had a question in where the attendee is saying that she's been inspired by all of the great experiences that everybody's been describing. But do you have any advice for individuals who want to request flexible working, but they're wary of the response, they're worried about it being turned down and the implications of that? Do you have any advice for individuals about how they might be able to do that?
I think that's a tough one. I think some of it's about, for me, introducing one simple thing is partly around giving permission to people to work flexibly. So having a commitment that corporately says we want everyone to work flexibly. We want people to try out what that means and what works best for them and works best for the business. I think the request and the basis of request, if it is a balanced request that works in harmony with the working life and with the personal life, and actually it's with the objective of making both better. I think the advice is to be brave and ask. I think there's sometimes there is a fear, and sometimes, yeah, we've introduced initiatives where our staff have said, well, thank you for introducing that initiative. That felt like you gave us permission to do it. And I never gave a great level of credence to the permission aspect of it. But I think that setting the example, one of the phrases we use is the shadow you cast as a leader. So I think if you cast the right shadow, if you give the policies that enable the permission and enable the flexibility, then you provide an environment where people are more comfortable to request flexibility. I think the flip side is that the nature of flexibility, it's not a one size fits all, as others have said. So I think you can work, for us, we work in different sites and different environments. So by its very nature, I think our people and we need to be flexible as we go from one environment to another through it. And also be prepared to, it doesn't have to be accepted. It's not, it needs to be a kind of mutual agreement.
Yeah, thank you. And building on that theme, Tom, have you had to turn down any unrealistic requests that don't meet the business needs?
Not as of yet, to be honest. This year, we haven't had too many unrealistic requests that have come in, to be honest with you. So I can't actually think of one off the top of my head. So not really. So I think it's a case, as I say, it does need to meet the business need, but I think the message from us is that we'll always try and accommodate where we can. So when a request does come in, sometimes at first, requests might think, oh, maybe that doesn't work, but you can sometimes, think, things outside the box, if you like, and make it work. So we haven't had to turn any down as of yet. We maybe have had to sort of think about different approaches when looking at requests, but we haven't actually turned any down as of yet for this year, and from what I remember.
Okay, thank you. Has anybody else had anything they've had to turn down, just out of interest? No? It's that basis of trust. It's building. Mark, one of our attendees would like to hear a little bit more about one simple thing and how it helps with flexible working.
Yes, so one simple thing is literally what it is. It's something that you do. We encourage all of our teams to work together and say that actually within their working world, there is one thing they can do in the week. So I want to go early to go to a gym session. I want to go to cricket training. I want to pick my children up from work. I'm doing a degree. I want to work from home one day a week. I want to do, simple things like just take a break at lunchtime. I looked at one the other day, said I'm going to go home on time 3 days a week. So we talk about the long hours and the presenteeism nature. I think it just encourages our teams, our sites, our staff to have the conversation, and it enables, I think one of the other panelists said about bringing your whole self to work. Actually starts to bring a bit of your personal life and a bit of your personality and your family into the work environment, and encompasses a greater level of understanding around people's personal circumstances and what they're dealing with.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks very much. Emma, we've got a question in for you. You were saying that communication was improved within and between teams. How was that achieved?
In terms of between teams, a couple of examples I can give are two of the teams that were initially on the pilots. One was finance and one was our asset management team. So a team a little bit like Mark talks about there, some of his staff who are out on site dealing with suppliers in terms of refurbing or building properties. And there was lots of communication between both the heads of service and the staff within those teams in terms of the data flow and the processes that need to operate between those two teams. So that's worked better. Another example would be sort of service level agreements, little mini service level agreements. So nothing too formal, but for example, payroll was a good example of this. They set up sort of priority 1, 2, and 3 requests that they get. So they categorize their ordinary requests into those and set that out on, even as simple as setting that out on their out of office. So if you, for example, emailed the payroll inbox about you hadn't been paid, then that would be a priority 1 and would get dealt with immediately. If you were just asking a question about what's your tax code, that might be a priority 2, or something else might be a priority 3, and set expectations around response times for that. Another good example was in our housing officer team, where when people wanted to take time away from work, they were empowered to just organise that time off between themselves. So they had a Teams group set up, so they didn't need to ask the supervisor's permission, but within some boundaries. So as long as there was adequate cover in those teams. And what we found that was because everybody wanted to be able to have the opportunity to take time off, they would deal better with each other's customers and actually moved away from having a patch mentality where a certain customer who lived on a certain estate belonged to one particular housing officer, that actually the customer was getting dealt with much more efficiently, and there was much better communication between the teams and within the teams so that people could take advantage of the time away from work.
That sounds amazing, Emma. One of the interesting questions that's come here is, what about the risk of employees working many, many more hours than they are contracted to? Louise and Tom, can I go to you both for this one?
Tom, do you want to go first?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. I think that's something that we've actually recognised in our organisation, the fact that when your laptop is maybe more readily available at home, and maybe not, you haven't got that sort of break from the office to at home, and often employees will work, well, often there's the potential for employees to work. So I think I've worked with quite a few of our employees to try and, even though we're working from home, can we separate the work environment to the home environment still, or even still where that's not possible, because obviously you understand that people are in different circumstances. Is there a drawer where you can sort of lock your laptop away, be quite disciplined with yourself, and sort of not have work on your mind, if you like, when you do sort of clock off, so to speak. And I think it's working with managers as well, just to speak to them and communicate that themselves. But I think it is just a case of trying to still break up your day into work and home. So whether you can, wake up at normal time and, use your travel time that you usually go to the office to go for a walk, or when I go to Costa and grab a coffee, that's my sort of morning routine to try and like I still have sort of a journey. And it just gives you that working day, more of a structure. Whereas I think if you're getting engrossed in some work, then, you could work easily straight through and not even think about it really. So yeah, that's what I would say on that point.
Okay, Louise?
Yeah, I think very similar, but very much we've been sort of touching base with people and encouraging the line managers and everything to really have that personal, that conversation and continued conversation around, how are you? How are you coping? Are you working too long hours? Make sure that you stop at a certain point, but equally realizing that some people might need to take time during the day, particularly if they've got caring responsibilities, and they might prefer to do their work a little bit later in the evening as well. So it's just that general conversation around, are you keeping well? You know, you're not, how are you coping with your workload, and just making sure that we keep those conversations open all the time, and people know that they can come to us, you know, if they are feeling a little bit stressed, if there is a huge volume of work, or, you know, it's just being approachable, I think, and always having that conversation, keeping that conversation open.
Thanks very much, Louise. I have been so fascinated by the questions and the answers given that I've allowed us to go to 12 noon. So I think Louise's answer is such a great way for us to finish, that so much of this is about communication, so much of this is about talking to people, keeping everything open, being responsive to your employees, developing and delivering trust, and the hugely positive responses you'll get from your customers, and the hugely positive response you'll get from your employees. And that those two things need to meet. The business needs need to be met, but also your people are incredibly important. Thank you all so much. I've absolutely loved this last hour. To our attendees, hope you'll follow us on social media and sign up for our newsletter to stay abreast of all of our work. And we hope to see you again at a future seminar. Mark, thank you to you and Wates. Louise, Tom and Emma, absolutely brilliant to hear from our finalists. And hopefully people will be inspired by all of the things that you're doing, and will apply for our Best Practice Awards next year. Thanks very much indeed, everybody. Goodbye.